Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Phil. My name is Terry Newcomb, and I'm an alcoholic. And I've given a lot of an opportunity to speak in front of a lot of groups, but I don't think I've ever done one on Zoom before. So, and I always get a little nervous, and I'm kind of humbled that anybody ever wants to hear what I have to say. So I always pray that for God's will to be done and not mine. So I don't have anything canned. So I don't know what's going to come out of this big mouth of mine. But I've been around for this program for 36 years, almost 37. And I grew up in a small village outside of Buffalo, New York. And I had a corner with we became the two parents, a brother, a dog, a white picket fence around the backyard, and a white house that sometimes got changed to a different color. But how I felt inside was always that, and I didn't know this at the time, but every time I walked into that home, it felt like I was walking into Jurassic Park. I wasn't too mature emotionally. I was always bigger. I was one of the biggest kids in school. And at times I was a little chunky. So I always felt a little different. And I didn't, kind of low self-esteem, I guess. And that's the way I grew up. Was always been successful in school and whatever I did. And my grandfather, my mother's father, had a hotel, and I was, because I was bigger, he would give me jobs to do at 11 and 12 years old, like getting somebody a glass of beer or filling the beer coolers. And that's when I became a liar, cheat, and a thief. Because I would always steal a couple bottles of beer or drink one out of a case that I was going to fill the coolers with. And then I would start stealing cases of beer. And then I would start stealing cases of beer and bottles of whiskey. And I'd go out and I would drink with my high school classmates that were drinkers. And I remember the lies because I got caught once filling the cooler, and these were heavy bottles, and these beer cases you could stand on them. I mean, they were not like they are today. And I got the cooler open, and I'm putting the bottles in the cooler, and my grandfather or my uncle or somebody noticed that there was a bottle that was already been opened, and it was an empty. And I said, well, the guy delivering the beer must have drank that bottle of beer. And that was my first real attempt at deflecting and lying. And they didn't say anything. They so he drank a bottle of beer. They didn't even say that. But the idea that I thought I was getting away with something, and how absurd that lie was, because the same guy was delivering those same cases for 10 or 12 years or whatever, how long. And every time he would deliver a case of beer, they would have 24 full bottles of beer in them. And it was only when I started filling the coolers that he started delivering 23 bottles. And I just didn't see how I thought I got away with something. And then I was an athlete, and we had different programs, and we kind of went to school by how smart they thought you were. So there was a gifted class, and then there was the near gifted class, and there was another class, and all the way on the bottom, and where the dummies were. And I was always in the gifted class or the near gifted class, and I had a lot of friends. And I, so when you invited me to your birthday party, I didn't think you wanted me there. I thought the reason I got invited was because our mothers were friends. And so once I started providing alcohol to these my classmates in the early 60s, a lot of the other people that were in my life stopped calling. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was making a conscious choice to hang around the drinkers, the people that drank, versus the non-drinkers. So the non-drinkers were healthier, and they just went on with their lives without me. And I didn't know that. And I hear people talk today about, how they had fun initially with their drinking. If I look back at that, when I was a teenager, there was an excitement there, and there was certainly a buzz from the alcohol and the idea that I was getting away with something. But I never had a good time, because I was always resentful at the other people that were there, and I thought they should be paying more homage to me or more attention to me because I'm providing the liquor, or I'm providing the beer. And heaven forbid, if a girl was there and she was sloshing this stuff down and she was paying attention to another guy, I was jealous. I was PO'd. So I don't have any real fond memories of drinking. And of course, I get drunk and I get sick, and that certainly wasn't fun. Walking around with a hangover in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Anyway, that's how it started. And I went out, I had like 13 scholarships out of high school for football, although I rather play baseball. And I took a school close to where I lived so I could be with my high school girlfriend, who of course we broke up that summer. And I wasn't college material in those times. And I kind of kicked around to get it took me 5.5 years or 4.5 years to get a degree in about 6 different schools, because I kept bouncing around. I kept drinking myself out of these schools. And I didn't know that. I thought everybody drank. I thought this is what went on. And I didn't have time to do the schoolwork. I was too busy trying to figure out how I was going to get my next drink. And that really became apparent when I got to the University of Arizona, and I didn't have a lot of money, and I'd have to borrow money from the janitor of the dorm, so I could go and sneak out of the dorm, because it was an athletic dorm, and go a couple blocks away from the school and buy a pitcher of beer for a buck. And I remember, drinking the first half of that pitcher really fast, and then trying to nurse the second half of that pitcher because I knew there wasn't any more after that was gone. Or I'd wake up at 2 in the morning or 4 in the morning, jonesing for some alcohol, and I didn't know that I was on my way to becoming an alcoholic. So after I graduated, I went back to Akron and I started a couple small different businesses that didn't go anyplace. And I got elected to be the village judge and the town judge, 2 different judgeships at 22 years old. And I got a big political job with the Erie County government, which is, it's a county government in New York, but the county budget was bigger than 26 state budgets at that time. And it had 10,000 employees. And I was off and running. And every day, near the end of the day, and we would go to a bar and work out the problems of the world. But that end of the day start being noon for some of us. And there was a guy there that worked in the office next to me. He was the deputy budget director. And I really didn't like him, but he was one of the guys that would show up drinking. And he parked his car next to me. And I had this big Cadillac because I bought that as a present for myself after my first divorce for getting rid of my first wife, who was a former Miss Buffalo. So she was a cokehead. And I didn't know she was a cokehead when we got married. And I don't know if she knew I was a drunk because I didn't know I was a drunk. Anyway, that marriage lasted about 6 months, which was about all the length of the interest in sex was. But after that, we didn't have anything in common, and we split. So I'm talking to this guy one day, this co-worker, the deputy budget director, and I says, Bob, I don't remember seeing you in Pideo's, which was one of the bars we went to last night. And he tells me that he wasn't there, and he had not been there for 6 months, and that he totaled the car, and that he was going to AA, and he thought he had the audacity to think that I would benefit if I went with him to an AA meeting. Well, I got really angry with him, suggesting that I had a problem with alcohol. And I went in the basement because I didn't believe his story about him having a car accident. And he always had a Ford Crown Vic. And the car that was next to me now was a Chevy station wagon. So I never noticed that. And I always prided myself at being, knowing details and observing things that were obscure to like a Sherlock Holmes type. That's where my head was. And I didn't even know that this guy wasn't there for 6 months, and he got a different car parked next to me. Well, nevertheless, I didn't go to AA. I kept working on my story, and the story's pretty simple. The guy would take a drink, and then the drink would take a drink, and then the drink took the man. So I can't tell you the day I became an alcoholic. You know, I can't do that, and I can't tell you, you know, when I recovered, the date I recovered. I can't do that either. I can tell you the day the drinking stopped, and uh, you know, this was, and I didn't know. I didn't know that trying to control my drinking, I was giving up on the idea of stopping drinking. So I tried. I knew I was in trouble with alcohol. I tried to stop. I couldn't stop. So then I started controlling it, and that didn't work. And uh, uh, you know, I lost everything. I lost the judgeships. I lost the job with the county, and I always wanted to be a lawyer. And those bastards in the law school wouldn't let me in. And there came a day when the pain uh, of drinking was greater than the pain of not drinking. So today I talk about the disease of alcoholism in 4 stages. You know, the joy from drinking, if there ever was one, the pain from drinking, the pain from not drinking, which I think we spend most of our time in AA talking about. And then there's the joy of not drinking, which is the recovery from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And the drinking stopped one day, but the pain didn't stop. And for the next 6 to 8 weeks, that was the worst period of my life. Not drinking and not knowing how to live without drinking. I couldn't open the door. I couldn't open the mail. I couldn't answer the phone. I didn't know how to wash anymore, and it was horrible. And I finally had to come to an AA meeting. In a lot of meetings in Buffalo, outside of a church basement door, they would put little letters. It'd be about 4 inches high, and it would say AA on it. And whoever got to the meeting early or first would put that outside the door so people would know what church door to go to the AA meeting. And I met a couple guys, and you know, those were like the biggest barriers I ever met in my life, because I wasn't going to go in that basement. No sirree. That wasn't, you know, that was my last stop. And then I heard stories of, and you can't see these days, you know, especially at night. And I would hear stories of guys getting off at bus stops, 3 or 4 bus stops early, because they were so scared that somebody knew, if they got off at the bus stop by the church basement or whatever the church basement may be, that somebody would know on the bus that they were going to AA. Another total stranger. And I went to my first meeting at University Men's, where I'm still a member of. And there were about 150 guys there that night. And I knew most of them. I drank with a lot of them. And I'm not sure what anybody said, but nobody laughed at me. Nobody threw me out. And for the first time in my life, I was filled with some hope. I'm hearing the stories about these people who were able to stop drinking, and some of them had smiles on their faces. And that's what I wanted. I wanted a smile on my face. And I would be full of that barroom bravado and laughter and that. But that was all phony. These people were genuinely happy. And they told me to come back. And I did. And I would go and I would complain about still not liking the way I felt. And what was going on was I was learning about the disease of alcoholism. And when they told me to get on my hands or knees to pray, I had a prayer. I prayed that God would get the booze out of my life and leave me alone. And that idea almost killed me. This idea I had, and I'll say this now and I'll say it often, the ideas that almost all the pain in my life then and now comes from some old idea I have, some old value or some old metric that I'm using that I bought into that's not working. That I think or thought was right. So I thought that the alcohol was the problem. And that if I got the booze out of my life, that would cure the disease of alcoholism. And it didn't. I was in just as much pain as I was, if not more now than when I was drinking. And I would go to meetings and they would tell me that if I could live a day without a drink, that I had that experience, that I wouldn't have to feel that way again. And every day I would feel a little better. Those periods of being okay would increase, and the periods of not feeling okay would decrease, and I could start doing stuff again, like answering the phone and opening my mail and bathing and start taking care of myself. And I didn't know that was a denial. I didn't know it. And for I don't know how many months, I would tell these guys that I was an alcoholic because where I grew up, that was a justification. That was an excuse. You said what to whom? Well, I was drunk. You drove the car into what? Well, I was drunk. You slept with whose wife? Well, I was drunk. So it was like a get out of jail card in a Monopoly game. So I know problems telling people, especially at AA meetings, that I was an alcoholic, but I didn't know what an alcoholic was. And what I found was that I really wasn't obsessed with alcohol. I was obsessed with me. I was obsessed with how I felt and what I thought. And if there was a fly in the room, and it would ruin my life, I knocked the house down to get to the fly. And if there was a girl that smiled at me, I wouldn't know her name, but my first thoughts were, "Oh crap, I got to go buy a ring." I was totally driven by my thoughts and my emotion and how I felt. And throughout the years, I've noticed that I wasn't unique, that were newcomers. If you ask them how they're doing, they tell you how they feel. And if they feel okay, they love the AA program. And if they don't feel okay, they wonder what the heck's wrong with their programs. And there really isn't. It's just that they're using the wrong denominator. They're using the wrong thing to calculate, to calibrate, to measure what's about this disease. But they're still obsessed with their thoughts and their feelings. They haven't been around here long enough to have changed. So behind me, I got this picture of an iceberg, and that's my disease. I thought all the disease was on top of the water, and if we got that, eliminated that, then everything would be hunky-dory. But as you can see, most of this iceberg is below the waterline. And most of my problems were inside of me. They weren't outside of me. And I fought, I wish somebody had told me that the first three steps were, what's the right word? They were experiences. They weren't really actions. They were things that were done already. They were post. That's what happened afterward. Where 4 through 12 are like they're instructions. So this concept that I had to learn to fully concede to my innermost self, that I was physically and mentally different than my fellows, it took a while for me to grasp that. And the fact that the physical piece, this allergy piece, that once I started drinking, I couldn't stop. I kind of figured that piece out first. Most of us figure that out first. But this idea that my mind, I've lost control of my mind, that I'm going to drink whether I want to or not, that I'm going to spend all my time and energy when I'm not drinking, thinking about drinking, or thinking about how I'm not going to drink, is the dilemma that we talk about in we agnostics. The lack of power is my dilemma. I got no power over I'm going to drink or not drink. I'm screwed either way. If I drink, I'm in trouble, and if I don't drink, I'm in trouble. They're both painful. And the idea that stopping the drinking would stop the pain, I was wrong. I was wrong. Now, there's people that come to these meetings who stop before they come to a meeting. I'm one of those. There's some who drink right up to the meeting, and maybe even during the meeting, but they never drink again. And then there's others who come to meetings and they continue drinking for a while. And then the drinking stops for them. So there's something's going on here other than just going to meetings. And that something is that we change. We get changed. The program of recovery is the medicine of the program. Nothing I do. Doesn't matter whether I do 1 push-ups or 100 push-ups. I just got to take the medicine. The process changes me. And, came to believe in a power greater than myself would restore me to sanity. I didn't know that I was playing God. Not that I was God that had lightning bolts or could move mountains or was omnipotent. But when it came to my life, I was the last word. And I acted like I was God. I made sure who was going to take care of me but me. And there's 3 slogans in the family afterward. Well, I had 3 slogans. Where's mine? What about me? And how could you? And that's how I was living my life. I didn't know that at the time, but that's how I was acting. So these thresholds, these people, this program's easy if I follow the instructions, right? That I'm not God, and I had to find a power greater than me and greater than alcohol that could lick this disease. I had this. Some of us have problems with this second step because we need an image. Others have a problem because they think it's religious and they're still biased. They have the old idea of the religion of their youth. Some are mad at God because they think he did this to us, and so on and so forth. But the reality was, this disease was not going to let me up long enough to find a big brother or anybody else that would come and kick the crap out of this disease. And today I have that relationship with that power. I don't care if the disease is down in Cancun doing push-ups for the next round. I got this power in my life that's going to protect me from this disease. And that's what this program's all about, is forming that relationship. It's not a method, and it's the gift, it's the miracle that we're told in step 10. A lot of meetings around here read the promises. And I don't know why we read the promises when, if we go to 10, we could read about the miracle, that this is the gift, that this obsession to drink is lifted from us, and that we found freedom, not only from alcohol, but from that crazy squirrel cage and that obsessive compulsiveness in my mind, And alcohol never told me to drink. Never once did it say to me, pick up a drink. What it would tell me was that I could do that I still had some power, that it'll be different this time, that the outcome will be different. And that's the lie of this disease, that we can manage it. Today, I think the 4 deadliest words in the big book are on page 30, where it says the idea that we are mentally and physically like others, comma, or presently may be, comma, has to be smashed. Because I see that over and over again. I see people who think they got this now. Their lives have gotten better. Things have turned around. The wives let them back in. The kids are start talking to them. They can find a job. When I got here, I was unemployed and unemployable, and in 6 months, I was underpaid, and my boss was an ass. And that's my story. But this idea that I got power and I can do this, it wasn't gonna work for me. And then I get to that third step, and I struggled with that. I didn't understand the English language, even though I was a college graduate. That I was only turning my life and will over to the care of this God. Just the care. He doesn't want my life back. He doesn't want my ego. This is just, and Bill says, I forgot the page, that this program's simple but not easy. A price has to be paid. And that price is the loss of self-centeredness. And that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. And I didn't have the power to do that. And I needed to ask help from you people to show me how to do that. In my case, I stepped off a curb one day and almost got hit by a big bus. They changed the street from one way to two ways. And I grasped the concept, the ability, the concept that that bus was more powerful than me. Not that the bus was a power that was going to cure alcoholism, but that bus was more powerful than me. And and that bus could get me across town faster than I could ever walk, and certainly keep me warm in the wintertime and dry on wet days. And and all I had to do was get on that bus, and then the rest would be taken care of. And that's all the third step really was. Am I willing to get on this bus? And some of us get hung up on who the hell's the bus driver is, or who I'm going to sit next to. But that it doesn't matter, because if you're going to call 911 for emergency services, you don't start quizzing them about the resume of the person that's coming to help, the police officer or the ambulance driver or whatever. Well, who are you sending? I've never heard anybody do that. And the fear, this introspective fear of doing the fourth step. I've never known anybody die from doing it, but I know a lot of people have died from not doing it, from picking up a pencil. And I was such a hypocrite about that, because, I'm supposed to write down who I didn't like. And it took me, the standard joke, 3 years and 45 minutes to do my fourth step. But when I was drinking, I couldn't wait to get to the bar to tell you guys at the bar who screwed me today, or what she did. Can you believe that? So every time I walked into a bar and started bitching about my life, I was really doing a fourth step. I didn't know that. I had no idea. And then we're advised that with newcomers to lay off the God stuff, because we don't want to scare them away. And it dawned on me one day that in We Agnostics, well, first of all, on page 47, there's a spiritual machine, and it says anytime you're doing using a spiritual term, ask yourself what it means to you. And this was the beginning of spiritual growth. So there's no limit to that. And of course, once we have a spiritual experience, that's what we have to do. We have to enlarge our spirituality. It's not something you get and you hang on to. It's something that needs constant enlargement. And I think that's why people return to drinking. They stopped enlarging their spirituality, and they fall into that 4 words of presently maybe. I got this now. Before we do anything here, if you're like me, I separate. So my untreated alcoholism is indicated by my separation from the people in my life who care about me. And since the World Series is on, and We Agnostic, there's the double proposition: God is or he isn't. He's everything or is nothing. And probably one of the most misquoted stories is this: they put, what is your belief? And it's not. The word is, what's your choice? What's your choice? So that's the Yogi Berra question. When you get to the fork in the road, take it. It doesn't matter what your answer is, that you choose God or don't choose God, because the next paragraph talks about faith. In my faith, I found faith in you people when I found out how you lived your lives, what was going on in your lives, and you didn't have to drink over it. That somebody got divorced and they didn't have to drink over it. Somebody lost a child and they didn't have to drink over it. They lost a job and they didn't have to drink over it. So the faith was not in a power greater than me, but my faith was in you people. That when you told me you didn't drink today because you did this program, that was enough. That was a beginning, and I that was easy to do. You know, it wasn't so complicated. And these steps are low; they're not mountains. That I would make them a mountain. You know, and people come and they struggle with this stuff, and it's not difficult. It's a low threshold if I can get out of the way. So the medicine, you know, at every meeting, the power's at every meeting. And I didn't know but that power was working on me and changing me. And if I'd followed the instructions, that this would go on, and that I get changed, that I get changed. You know, and that's our covenant in the 11th step. I pray only for God's will for me and the power to carry that out. And right before that, you know, right before the promises, there's this left hook in the program that up until now, we've done all this to put our own houses in order. But the real purpose is to become of maximum service in myself and my fellows. Well, I mean, if I'd have came in here and on the first day you told me that's what I was signing up for, there's no way that was going to happen. That just wasn't going to happen. And I got changed. I got changed from that person who was only concerned about themselves to being aware of others. And the last promise, you know, most of the promises deal with me, deal with us as individuals. But that last promise that we suddenly realize that God's doing for us what we couldn't do for ourselves, just maybe a spiritual awakening. It certainly sounds like one. And a spiritual experience, you know, is the book is full of our definitions, but they're not necessarily in chronological order, because back at step 3, or no, it's early agnostics, Bill tells us that they told us that their stories, that their lives, even without alcohol, weren't satisfactory. That the greatest fact in their lives was a conscious contact of a God that would solve their problem. And I think that's what I try to do. I try to go through the day saying as many times as I can, thy will be done, not mine. I'm a lawyer now. I always wanted to be a lawyer. I got to be a lawyer at 37 years old. And I'm the president of the Bar Association's Assigned Counsel Program, who gives lawyers to people who can't afford them now. But before I answer, before I answer any phone, I try to say, oh, thy will be done, not mine. Before I walk into my own house, I'll sit in the driveway, and I'll say that, and I'll ask God to give me the strength to be useful when I walk in the door in my own house, because I've got no idea what's going to meet me there, what kind of chaos may come about. And the payoff is that I've learned how to love other people, and from you people, and because of that, I'm loved now. So I always wanted to get, but I can't get unless I give. And I had a late friend that would tell me that all the love songs were about finding somebody to love, somebody to take care of. Not the songs are not written about let somebody love me. And I started listening to those songs and all the songs, because up until I got here, I knew the words, but I never heard the music. And today I hear the music, and it's always about how can I be useful? How can I be helpful to you? And I've been catapulted into a fourth dimension, into a life beyond my wildest dreams. Um, I've got two boys at an old age. I wish I had six. One's 21, and he's all conference football player. He's all conference academically. He's a Dean's List student, as a senior. And I got an 18-year-old who's studying green electricity and playing on a lacrosse team. And we talk. I try to be useful to them and to others. And I think I'm going to stop now before I dig this hole any deeper. But thank you very much for letting me speak tonight.